Can't hear him.
Hello, guys. Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie Tolhurst, and welcome to the Charlie Tolhurst Show for today, the 12th of March. Your Saturday night starts right here with a discussion on all the latest news from the world today, including as well the latest news from Formula One, Russia and Ukraine, many other things we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm joined by Late Party Sporter Zach Chambers to run all the latest news. Hello, Zach.
Hi, Charlie. Hello, mate.
Now, Zach, we're going to start off with the big news of the week. Now, Vladimir Putin is known as a para president, if you want to call him by the terms of that, as he continues intense bombardment of Ukraine. And I have to say, in my view, sees the destruction of a hospital in Mariupol and other venues as Marxist propaganda. Vladimir Putin is destroying Ukrainian citizens and targeting them who are extremely innocent. This is 100% a war crime, and we should be recognizing this as a problem for Russia. Russia clearly are facing intense sanctions that the world have imposed. And Zach, I have to say, I think this week of fighting in Ukraine has been, I think, probably the most deadliest yet.
Yeah, it's getting worse, Charlie, no doubt about it. Because Russia have failed in their objectives, really, to do what they plan to do, really, Charlie, and take over the cities in a couple of days when it's gone totally the wrong way. They've failed to realise the strength of the Ukrainian army, the Ukrainian people, and it's not going well for them. So they're using law-breaking measures now, even more of them, actually, to be fair. What they were doing is already law-breaking, but they resorted to, well, let's just say it's even more law-breaking measures, Charlie. There's now worries that they're now going to start using chemical weapons on cities and civilian targets, something which, by the way, they used in Syria. They decided to side with the Syrians at the time and decide to use their own army for chemical weapons there as well, which is a horrible thought to think about, Charlie. But no, it's getting worse, I'm afraid, Charlie. Bombs, everything like that, rockets, illegal rockets, different types of rockets, by the way. With some of them that poison the air out are being used as well. And quite frankly, Charlie, despite all these efforts, they've still not gained any major cities. They've still not gained any major progress. At one point, however, there was a point where the power plant nearly got blown up by the Russians. Thankfully, it didn't come to fruition. Thankfully for that. But it's getting more and more aggressive, Charlie, and it's getting worse and worse. And it doesn't appear there's an end of sight at the moment, Charlie, I'm afraid. It's getting the Russians are going to continue getting aggressive. They're going to continue getting dislodged by the Ukrainians. And I'm afraid, Charlie, it's getting worse, unfortunately. It's really, I'm afraid, getting in terms of the progress that they're trying to aim of, and it's not happening, I'm afraid. So yeah, they're struggling so much to the point where the Ukrainian people are resisting very well and putting up a good old fight. This week we saw it was quite a historic week in some ways, Charlie, because this week we saw President Zelensky's address to Parliament. Yeah. President Zelensky addressed to Parliament, something which is very untraditional in today's world. It's the first time we've seen in modern history, Charlie, where a Parliament has been used for a video link of a foreign president. What a gathering that was, Charlie. What a historic gathering that was. It really was historic. It was echoing the thoughts of Winston Churchill. I remember it reminds me of the D-Day speech. We'll take them, but we're going to fight them in the sea. We'll fight them on the beaches. We'll fight them on the roads.
Yeah, the Blitz. Yeah, I remember that very well, yeah.
Remember them very much. It felt very D-Day, very Blitzy-like sort of speech that, echoed through a resonance of Winston Churchill. And you know what? He is Winston Churchill somewhere. He's Ukrainian Winston Churchill at the moment. He's been back in his base. He's back in his office this week. Very brave of him to do that. His advisors have been out in the street recording videos as well. But he's been brave. Unfortunately for the Russians, they're getting closer to the city, but they're still facing resistant pushbacks and counterattacks on the Ukrainians. It's an incredible job of what they're doing. And we've seen such sweet moments, by the way. I'll get to one of them when I choose my British star at the end of the week, because you'll love my choices, by the way. And there's been some very sweet moments as well for the community, and there's people as well that just bringing aid to people as well. It's an incredible job that the worldwide community has stepped up to do the efforts as well, Charlie. As well, it's been an incredible job by everyone across the world to continue supporting them.
Yeah, Zach, I have to say what they done to the hospital in Mariupol. Thank goodness nobody died. 17 people injured. Only 17 people injured in that attack. Pretty horrifying.
I wish it was zero. I wish it was zero, Charlie, because that is a war crime in its own self, what the Russians did. They can deny, bluster, and put all this pretending that events were fake as much as they want, Charlie. But what they did was a Russian effort to destroy a civilian building full of people that were probably wounded already in there, Charlie. And to just wound them anymore is a crime against humanity. It's shocking that's even been considered in Europe these days, Charlie. It really is shocking as well.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, Zach, in my monologue, I called this Marxist propaganda because I have to say this is a terrorism act. Is Putin doing this to promote more propaganda for Russia? Is he trying? He feels like he wants to do this to just own his Russian empire and to destroy a children's hospital where people in there are being wounded or people in there being treated. That's absolutely unacceptable. That is a war crime, as you said, Zach, and I 100% agree with you. He should face whatever legal action he is given for that. I think that alone, and also what we saw to like what Hitler done, say in London back in World War II. Remember when Hitler targeted civilians and particularly targeted, of course, Parliament. Ray, remember Parliament during the World War II? The House of Commons chamber blew up. In 1941 that was, and then in 1950 it was reconstructed with the chamber we see today. I mean, Zach, it feels similar to that kind of, doesn't it?
Oh, it definitely does, Charlie. It really does feel quite similar to that in a very shocking way. It does. It feels like the Blitz all over again. Indiscriminating bombing people, targets for no reason whatsoever. It really does feel like that, Charlie, and it's harrowing in that Europe is facing this problem. Still, it's unbelievable, Charlie. It's unhumane that this problem can even happen in Europe these days, Charlie. As well, and it's incredibly sad. This is what was happened, Charlie. This has caused the biggest refugee crisis in Europe for generations since World War. I mean, there's been more than 2 million that have come out of Ukraine, gone to the likes of Poland and other countries. I mean, our response here in the UK has been shocking at times, Charlie. I mean, Priti Patel, well behind the curve, unfortunately, on this one. Failing to get set up schemes as well, visa applications. They couldn't even set up a visa office, Charlie. There was none there, even though the Home Secretary at one point claimed there was on the Monday and the Tuesday. And we had this absolute mess, Charlie, of people being denied access to the UK to flee and get asylum, whilst everyone else was going to Poland, France, Germany, all the lots. It's tragic. It's unacceptable on our part, Charlie. I'm glad that the Home Secretary has sort of finally moved along the route now and sort of upped the game a little bit. But there's this, from what I've read, Charlie, is this discussed among many cross-party MPs really about what the home actions of the Home Office. I think there's sort of disgruntlement in the Home Office itself, because I noticed there's now brought in a minister in the Lords for refugees and a few more special advisors in Priti Patel's Home Office. That means that she's obviously having clear problems herself. That the fact that she needs more special advisors to help her make these decisions, it's not good. It's not very good, Charlie, at all. And it's been poor management by the Home Office throughout the whole week.
I think as well what Sergei Lavrov said about it, the foreign minister for Russia, called the attack on the hospital pathetic. and
Oh,
shameless.
that's rich. That's rich from the Russian foreign minister. When it's probably his troops that probably got ordered that sort of crap, Charlie. I wouldn't trust a word out the Russians' mouth. I have to say, Charlie, I'm glad in the last few weeks that RT has been taken down here in Britain through the cutting of the satellite boxes, and I'm just glad that all this Russian propaganda is being cut away as well.
It's very crazy, Zach. I have to say that, and also as well at the end of the show, I want to nominate my British star to someone. Unfortunately, it didn't end up in the way it ended up, but it's quite an emotional thing that I just wanted to share. And obviously, as well, so far on the list, at least 14,000 people have known to have died. 1.8 thousand people have had non-fatal injuries. 2.6 million people have been displaced. At least 1.7 thousand buildings have been destroyed, costing around 190 billion US dollars of damage. That's huge. That's massive. I cannot say enough that's a huge amount of damage. And I just wanted to share my screen quickly, guys. I'm live on YouTube tonight for Charlie Tolhurst Show about what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says. He claims that Russian forces have kidnapped the mayor of Melitopol. He claimed that Putin had transitioned into a new stage of terror. The US President Joe Biden also warns that direct US involvement in Russia could also be, would cause World War III, or probably as what Zach said last week, known as a armed conflict here. Now, Mariupol officials said on Friday that around 1,582 people have been killed 12 days since the siege begun. Zach, what do you make of this news story on the Russians capturing a mayor in one of the Ukraine cities?
Yeah, it's certainly a new stage of the terrorism campaign, Charlie, no doubt about it. The fact they're resorting to capturing officials is hell. It's inhumane, as I said. It's barbaric, and quite frankly, I don't think it's the worst they're going to do, Charlie. The fact they've already killed civilians already, the Russians have. It wouldn't surprise me if they try and kill politicians, mayors, and everything like that. Trust me, Volodymyr Zelensky will be on their hit list, Charlie. No doubt about it. I think for the Russians, if based on the intel that we know for the last few weeks, as thing as well, Charlie. But the fact the mayor's been captured and everything, it's wow. That is extremely worrying. I mean, the Russians have been taken. The Russians have captured politicians. They've took some power plants, Charlie, that's been put under threat and everything like that. It's not the worst that they can really do at this stage, Charlie. There's going to be far more worse things up their sleeves. And going back to what you said about Joe Biden, Charlie, he's right. I mean, if you think about it, the strategy of the Europe and pretty much all the allies here, Charlie, is that they do not want any of their troops or any of their combat going into basically Ukraine, because otherwise they will technically be involved in the fighting. And what that would happen is cause armed conflict between other countries, and that country gets attacked. Then Article 5 gets triggered, and then troops come in and start going direct combat with other Russian soldiers, Charlie. And that's what cannot happen. And I agree with him. I know there's been a little bit of criticism around it, but it's absolutely the right approach not to send any Russian, British, Ukrainian, US, and any other troops directly into Ukraine. The thing is, we should be continuously supplying whatever the Ukrainians feel that they need, Charlie. So the likes of no-fly zones, which I know the Ukrainians been suggesting, cannot happen, Charlie, because otherwise we are in direct conflict otherwise with the Russians. So as much as I admire Zelensky for trying to get that set up, it's simply not possible, I'm afraid. And the last thing the world we need the world to be doing, Charlie, is getting into armed conflict. The battle needs to be between Ukraine and Russia, and the Ukrainians have to do this on their own, although we could provide them with their support. And I think that should be keeping their way. It doesn't happen high up as well, Charlie, that North Korea have started testing ballistic missiles and into the sea next to South Korea as well, and Japan. I mean, the North Koreans are strategically probably using this at their advantage now to distract from the world what they're doing. I mean, come on, we've already got Ukraine and Russia going against each other. We don't need North Korea getting to the act and deciding to cause terror in our hell world, Charlie. You really don't.
Yeah, oh god, don't tell me with these leaders of Kim Jong-un's nuclear weapons. The man who wants to send nuclear weapons to the US. I find that very weird indeed. Well, this is what US President Joe Biden had to say regarding a no-fly zone in Ukraine. This is what he had to say. Have a listen to this.
We'll defend every single inch of NATO territory with the full might of the united and galvanized NATO. We will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine. Direct confrontation between NATO and Russia is World War III, something we must strive to prevent. But we already know Putin's war against Ukraine will never be a victory. He hoped to dominate Ukraine without a fight. He failed. He hoped to fracture European resolve. He failed. He hoped to weaken the transatlantic alliance. He failed. He hoped to split apart American democracies in terms of our positions. He failed. The American people are united. The world is united. And we stand with the people of Ukraine.
Well, that's what Joe Biden had to say there on the issue. Now, for all the listeners out there who don't know what Article 5 is, me and Zach are going to explain what Article 5 is and how this would be triggered if the conflict did escalate further. Now, Article 5 is very, very important. And it's to do with preventing, obviously, tough sanctions, and tough sanctions would be implemented under this act here. So this is what it involves here, guys. Its collective defiance means that an attack on NATO, one NATO ally is an attack on all of them. The principle of the collective defense is enshrined in Article 5 Washington Territory. NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time in history after the 9/11 terrorist attack against the United States. Zach, could you also go into more detail for the listeners about exactly what Article 5 is?
Yeah, let me get so let me get this up here if I can. Yeah, here we go, Charlie. You got it up here, as you can tell, Charlie. But Article 5 is basically the triggering point where if a NATO country is attacked by a foreign country, that means that, you know, an attack on one is what they call an attack on all, basically. Charlie, it's only been used once, Charlie, can I just point out? It's only been used once, and that was when 9/11 happened. And that when obviously the US got attacked by terrorists in Al Qaeda, and in you know, Afghanistan, Syria, and all that sort of things, as well. And when they saw the attack on that, and once a foreign entity attacked a NATO country, they triggered Article 5 straight after on the 12th of September. And what happened after that was, once they triggered Article 5, they took collective action of measures to support the United States, to support the country that's been attacked, and then launch anti-terrorism operations. So it gives you an idea of what Article 5 involved. It means triggering. If Article 5 is triggered, it means that if a country is attacked, it's an attack on the whole of NATO and the whole of the country, and then a package of measures is then taken place, and a plan is taken place to counter what has happened, and basically to make basically the enemy punished, basically, in some ways. We've seen what happened after 9/11, that the Iraq war started, and we know how terrible that was for really the whole world and the US in terms of what happened there. And it was we know the results of last year, China, and the consequences of that. But yeah, it's a defensive way to show solidarity with a country that's been attacked, Charlie, and to take counteractions to make sure that it doesn't happen again, and to punish basically the country that's caused this problem in another way. So yeah, that's Article 5 of the NATO treaty.
Yeah, and it's very interesting as well, like, as we say, that Putin is causing this invasion of Ukraine right now. I mean, Zach, what do you think is going to happen after Ukraine? How do you see Putin's propaganda mission setting up for Russia? Do you think Putin has to surrender here, or do you think that the potential threat of an armed conflict is ever nearing?
Well, I think the problem for the short term, Charlie, is that Putin will escalate. I'm afraid Putin will escalate, trying to escalate this even more because he hasn't got what he wanted. Putin lives on the ideology that he gets whatever he wants, he gets, and if he doesn't get the whole territorial city of Ukraine, then that's a defeat for him. He may destroy a few civilian targets to, sort of half declare victory, but that's in itself is a defeat. He's already been defeated in some way, Charlie. His strategic plan has been defeated in some ways. And short and medium term, what will happen with Ukraine, we don't know. Hopefully, Charlie, it will be victory where the current government is in place. It is. Ukraine can rebuild. It will be a long rebuild. There'll be so much money that has to be invested in that rebuild. Hopefully, the help of the international community, Charlie. But if not, then who knows? I think this fighting, Charlie, is, I'm afraid, for the long term. Russia's kicked this off. And as for Putin himself, I honestly, Charlie, I think once the Russians start to feel the even more effects of the sanctions that have been imposed against them, and all the oligarchs having their assets frozen and their money freezing. We've seen that with Roman Abramovich this week. The after effects of what's happened with that, then there may well be an uprising in Russia to force the president out in some way or another. I think he's screwed long term anyway, Putin, because of his actions, because of the terrible miscalculation he did. I mean, it's bizarre that he makes all these miscalculations, but I'm afraid to say he made these miscalculations, and it's going to cost him extremely dear, Charlie. Hopefully, his position in office.
Yeah, I compare him to a Nazi. I compare him to Hitler.
I agree. I tell you, it's not often that I compare people to Nazis, and it's not pleasant being called that, comparing people to Nazis. But Vladimir Putin is a 2022 Nazi. He literally indiscriminately kills people, take over countries. He is a Nazi, and not in a good way. Or not, Nazis are never good anyway, so let's just clear that.
No. If you all remember what happened in the Second World War, the Holocaust, it's horrible what happened. It's a treaty of what Hitler used to do, and yeah, it's basically to do with terrorism. So it's really important, guys, that you really understand the definition of that word. And the way we've used it on the show tonight is to describe what Vladimir Putin is doing to a sovereign country who is, by the way, a strong neighbour. I was on the way home tonight from being out with my friends, and I drove past in Langdon Hills somebody's house which actually raised the Ukrainian flag on there to show solidarity for the country. Can I just say to that household, if you're watching the show tonight,
that's brilliant.
Thank you for showing support, because Ukraine right now are suffering the huge effects of an invasion with so much of their land destroyed. And yeah, thank you so much to everyone who has been paying their tributes to the country and for generally raising awareness, and those people who are going out there and protesting for stopping this war, because this war, as we said, will have long-term economic and health consequences to the millions of Ukrainian citizens living in that country.
And so Russia, hopefully.
Yeah, and Russia, of course. Now, we're going to move on in a minute now, to the next part of the show, because I just want to touch on something else, which has also been in the news recently. Now, COVID-19 gets a mention tonight because there's been a review going on about whether people should have a fourth vaccination into the virus. Now, obviously, the booster vaccine was taken last year, but there's also been claims potentially to have a fourth vaccination. I have to say, Zach, this sounds pretty interesting to me. I feel like the world continues mass vaccination in a pandemic.
Yeah. Interesting enough, Charlie, COVID cases, we shouldn't forget the issue of COVID, because I know for some people it feels like it's over when it's not. There has been the matter of COVID cases increasing this week, Charlie, for the first time in a while. Now, there's no figures for now. The normal thing now during a weekend is that there is actually no figures during the weekend. So we're going to have to rely on what is available. But on the 11th of March, we had 55,000 cases. There's been a steady uptick of cases, Charlie, which isn't good news. On the, I think it was the 9th. Let's go to 9th, if I can get 9th. Yeah, 51, 50. So there's been a steady uptick in COVID cases, unfortunately, Charlie, which isn't proper. The hospitalizations have started to creep up again a little bit. The 11-day, 7-day average is 11,314, which is up at the moment, Charlie, which isn't great. And now there's been the detection of a new variant which combines Delta and Omicron. So that presumably it's just as, in terms of health-wise, quite makes you quite sick. And also it spreads very quickly as well. So the worst of two worlds. However, Charlie, there was also some very promising data from the Financial Times, which I saw the other day, which suggests now that this virus has turned, there's been so much people infected now, and there's so much antibodies being built in our systems, that this virus is apparently now just as lethal as the common flu, Charlie, which is massive progress throughout the last 2 years. This started out as a deadly virus, first of all. For 2 years ago, Charlie. This started.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I think, was it yesterday? It was the pandemic or something?
Yeah, well, it was 2 years yesterday. It was a pandemic, and the worldwide shutdown started really advancing, Charlie, because it was a virus that we didn't know at the time. It was quite very deadly, more deadly than we ever seen. And now we have the latest data out, which suggests now that because we've built so much antibodies in our system, and because of the reinfections, that actually we've built so much immunity to the point, thanks to vaccinations, that it is now, COVID is just, if you have been vaccinated, just a flu, to be fair, which is quite an extraordinary development, Charlie. It really is an extraordinary development. I'll try and find this thing. I think I bookmarked it, unfortunately. But yeah, it's now just as less as lethal, really, to be fair, than a common flu, which is stunning in its own right, Charlie. In some ways, I think it's incredible. Although it just proves, Charlie, something, that COVID is not over. In many ways, Charlie, and I think people need to stop forgetting that it's actually not over.
I know. It's going to be interesting how many people use the pandemic as an excuse now. I mean, it's going to be interesting.
There's no rules in place. Everyone forgot about it, really, to be fair, Charlie.
I have to be neutral on my show, but I mean, I've been very vocal on social media about the latest.
I know.
The latest news from, say, if you live all the way over in, say, a country like, I don't know, China, that's imposing lockdowns on cities with a couple of cases, and Jacinda Ardern's poll ratings now falling down after her horrendous COVID response, with measures for the Omicron variant not working at all. So it's clear to me that some politicians are getting affected in the polls there, and slumping results, especially in New Zealand, for Jacinda Ardern, looking like a boiled rat, in my opinion, on that issue. So yeah, that's all I can say on that issue there. So that's the first part of the show done. Oh, let's go and do some sports news now. Oh, wow. Plenty of sports news to talk about. Now, we're going to touch on Formula One testing to start with now from Bahrain. We've got the chance to see the cars. By the way, I've only been keeping up to date with this on my social media, on Twitter. But today, Max Verstappen was quickest for Red Bull, in the sign that there were some good things to come for the team. However, though, it was very interesting, Zach, to gather the data ahead of the first round next weekend.
Yes, Charlie. It's been televised this week, and I watched 18 hours of it across the 3 days, Charlie. 18 hours of testing for me. I watched out of the 24 possible. So I've been watching very carefully, Charlie. I've watched as much as I can of it. And what's my conclusions out of this, Charlie? Well, First of all, from what I've watched, Charlie, and what the footage I've seen, it's been a lot actually. The cars are harder to drive this year, certainly, Charlie. There's still a lot of development that's needed between the cars. There's a lot of it's harder to drive, especially in slow speed corners. The aero has changed so much, and the floor has changed so much to the point where cars are struggling to get through slow speed corners, and that the drivers have to battle the cars a little bit more. That's certainly one thing that I have to notice, Charlie. Second is certainly bumpiness, the proportion, whatever you want to, proportion. It's a bit of a hard one to announce that, Charlie, because it's a hard one to pronounce. Actually, I'm afraid proportion. It's when the car is bumping, it's going for a bump, and the car keeps moving, and the driver will feel the effect on the helmet as well. They move back and forward. The car moves from front to back, and basically it's like a bit of jelly, really, Charlie. It's going through a bump in the road and everything. Like you're going, way. A lot of proportion on the cars, certainly. Mercedes, one of them, Charlie. Goodness, that was a good example of that. Their car is very bouncy, very uneven, overweight, and that's a problem that I have, Charlie. Certainly on the straights as well. Thirdly, the upgrades. One thing I will have to give Mercedes credit is the side-podless side pods, Charlie, which we saw this week. I have to say, an incredible innovation and creativity of the regulations. I have to say, is that going to improve the car's performance potentially? And the one thing is, are they sandbagging? They always seem to bluff on the media that they're not doing well at this point. Are we generally seeing it though at the point? But certainly from what I've seen, Charlie, let's go through the ones who've had a good test. Red Bull, Ferrari, I have to say, Charlie, they've been certainly looking very good. Ferrari, I think, have been the best throughout this test, Charlie. I
agree, 100%. Really good, Ferrari.
Really good, Charlie. There's been very little issues. Everything has gone much to plan for them, Charlie. They've got what they need to get in. They've got data and performance. They've had a very, very reliable test, Charlie. For all 6 days, they've had a very reliable test. And full credit to the team at Enzo because, wow, they've had a very good test. They're certainly the team that's performed the best as well. Red Bull as well, Charlie. The speed on the soft tyres and the C5s with Verstappen putting in lap by lap at the end of today. Excellent, Charlie. Excellent pace in the cars as well. Mercedes, it's got potential. They're mostly focusing on the high speed, low speed, high fuel runs. But they've certainly got issues, Charlie, with the proportion as well. Ferrari, as we said, just consistent, Charlie. And if they really are in that top 3, Charlie, then something as well. One of the teams that have had, unfortunately, with a really bad test, Charlie, is McLaren. Dan Ricciardo testing positive for COVID means that Lando Norris has took his basically all 24 hours really total time of testing as well. Haas having a few problems as well. Although it's not really their fault because their freight ran a little bit late.
And Kevin Magnussen returns to the team as well.
Yes, Kevin Magnussen returns to replace the inevitable replacement of Nikita Mazepin. As well, in some ways. Let's see. Well, so my rating is, Charlie, that certainly from looking at this week, that Ferrari and Red Bull certainly the best 2 of the teams. Mercedes having a few issues now and then I think it's a tough one between the Alfa Alpine, Aston Martin as well. Alfa Romeo, Alfa Tauri's having a few issues now. Haas, obviously, good pace, I have to say, Charlie. Good pace, even though they had a few problems as well. McLaren, though, certainly, I think the ones that have had a terrible weekend with the brake put issues, very poor design on the brake problems, Charlie. They have to have 1 week to have this fixed because next week we are going racing for the first time. I have to say a lot of uncertainty, Charlie, but I think after this test, from what I've seen, Ferrari and Red Bull were the ones that came out the best. And if that's really the case, Charlie, then Mercedes got a hell of a plan, a hell of a job to get up. They could be sandbagging a little bit. It's possible that teams are sandbagging, not showing their true paces. Red Bull, though, very good on the short run. One to watch, I think, for me. Ferrari, though, I have to say, I think they really are the sleeping dogs this season, Charlie, potentially, because they have been great to watch throughout Barcelona and Bahrain. Very consistent on both tests, Charlie. Got everything what they've done. That I think, to me, they've been the best team in terms of reliability and getting what they need to do in both the tests. And I think that's one to watch.
You'll all find out probably next weekend when we go racing. I was just going to say as well before we move on, shout out to Jack Surridge, who is his YouTube channel, Jack F1. You can go and check it out. I appear on one of these podcasts during the week to discuss about F1. He was speaking to me. We were speaking last week about well, he told me actually, Zach, that you and him had a bit of a text, or like a bit of a comment.
Oh yeah, I will certainly be texting
on Twitter about Nikita Kevin Magnussen coming back.
Yeah, I obviously we do text now and then. I will certainly be texting him next weekend if I can, and possibly I'll get his thoughts of the test. I have to also we will keep in touch, obviously. But yes, I I know you do your show Friday evening with Jack normally as well. So I occasionally pop in and watch it now and then. It's a very interesting watch. But yes, I'm very much looking forward to next weekend, Charlie, because we do not know what's going to happen. And I can't wait to share another season of watching F1. I'm more excited than ever, let me just say, Charlie, after watching last season. And despite all the faster endings or whatever you want to call, I hope if we really do have 3 teams in the running, Charlie, boy, bring it on. Bring it on. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, record number of races, I believe, this year as well. So it's going to be pretty good to watch, I think.
23, hopefully, without Russia. It's probably going to be replaced. I don't know which one yet, Charlie. But then it looks like Russia is going to get replaced by another race at some point. We don't know what one yet, but hopefully we'll find out very much soon.
Yeah, and of course as well, Colton Herta will test for McLaren this season as well. So we'll keep you updated on all that news. Now, we're going to talk all about motorsport, continuing the theme of motorsport, because there's still a lot of motorsport news to get through tonight. We're going to go stateside now to the US and talk about NASCAR now, because they raced last week at Las Vegas. And we're going to just quickly recap the race there for the Cup Series in Las Vegas there. The Pennzoil 400 presented by Jiffy Lube. Alex Bowman winning a pretty chaotic race sack there.
Yeah, Alex Bowman, it was a chaotic race, Charlie. It was certainly a lively one from what I saw. I know NASCAR's back tonight as well, probably around about 9:30 for the Xfinity race, which will get off soon. But the Cup Series race, Alex Bowman winning that one, a very chaotic race. Carl Lawson was second. That was Ross Chastain. Kyle Busch 4th, winning by him 5th. Alex Albon was 6th. Tyler Reddick 7th. Truex was 8th. Elliott 9th. Christopher Bell 10th in what was very good race, Charlie. Again, Charlie, these new Gen 7 cars, very exciting to watch. It's making for better racing with different setups and different drivers and different plans. It's making racing very good, Charlie, I have to say, as well. There's been a lot of exciting racing. There's certainly incidents for Denny Hamlin, who got caught up in crashes. Cole Custer, Biffle, Ryan Bravey, Chase Briscoe, Eric Jones, as well, got caught up in accidents as well. But nevertheless, Charlie, very good race to watch. And I think Phoenix is going to be exciting, Charlie, because it's going to be a short track. But with the new cars as well, I think we'll make some very close racing. I think we'll get a surprise out of that too, as well, Charlie, as well. But I'm looking forward to that one as well. But Alex Bowman winning in the 48. Close finish, by the way, Charlie. That That was
Yeah, it was
close.
very close.
Very close. It came down to the last lap as well, but it was very close. And I want to see about 33 more close races, Charlie, in my opinion, because the cars have been very good so far, this new Gen 7. And hopefully it'll be the same as well. There's the starting grid, by the way, for tomorrow's race. It's Brian Blaney on pole ahead, Damien Hamlin, with William Byron third and Christabel fourth, and Aaron Bowling fifth, and Chase Briscoe sixth. Seventh is Larson, Austin Cindric eighth, Alex Bowman is ninth, Joe Logano is 10th. And let's go through some of the. Austin Cindric crashed last week. William Hamlin as well is up there as well. There's some consistent performers in there, I have to say, looking at the field, Charlie, at the moment. But Blaney and Hamlin, you would say, have good chances to win the race at the top two. But obviously, this is the new car type. It's causing a bit of unpredictability. And
yeah, it was.
we're going to have a mixed field, certainly in the race.
Yeah, Zach, I saw a lot of that. I watched the highlights of the Cup Series race the other day, and I saw so many drivers losing it on the corners. I think Daniel Suarez was an innocent hitter. I think was it Brad Keselowski lost control, and then Suarez got hit, or Ryan Blaney it might have been. But yeah, Ryan Blaney's season's still not great. Denny Hamlin's had an awful opening 3 races. He's got to up his game if he wants to get a playoff spot. But obviously last week's winner, Alex Bowman, back in the playoffs again. Obviously, you get 16 drivers that can lock themselves in through race wins, or it is done on points. If there are multiple drivers that win multiple races, so that will be Austin Cindric, Kyle Larson, and Alex Bowman, who are the current drivers in the playoffs, or as they call it, the chase. The next race is actually going to be tomorrow for the Cup Series. It's the Runoff Mortgage 400, I believe, taking place. The Runoff Mortgage 500, sorry, taking place at Phoenix Raceway. The Xfinity race gets underway at 9:30 as well. And the Camping World Truck Series, does not take place this weekend. That actually takes place at Atlanta. That's when that. So yes, that takes place at Atlanta on the 19th of March at 6:30 in the afternoon there. So that is the motorsport news there. And also as well, I just want to give a quick update for all you guys watching the IndyCar season as well. IndyCar are back next weekend at, I believe, Texas. The XPEL 375 race is going to be up next. March the 20th for that race as well. And it says on here, Colton Herta, his best oval finish is 4th. However, though, he wants to win at Texas. And Zach, this is a big race for all of the IndyCar teams, Texas, the first big oval of the season.
It is the big oval of the season, Charlie. Texas has been quite lively. It produces exciting racing. It's very fast circuit as well. And it's very fast. There's certainly bound to be a few crashes happening as well. As much as this was possible, there'll probably be a few as well. But it's an oval race, and this early on this season, Charlie, is an oval could define your season in some way because it's very easy to lose points here, and very easy to make mistakes in a pack of 3, 2 wide. And just remember, Charlie, as well, that there will be dirty lines at Texas as well. We've known that especially using the outside is not reliable with these IndyCar, Charlie, because there's so much, they use the inside so much that so much dirty dirty rubber is put on the outside, and the car is not very grippy. So if overtaking will be difficult in some ways, considering it is an oval, because of the dirty lines that are caused, Charlie, and the lack of grip on the outside of the circuit in some corners. So overtaking is not going to be easy as some people think it is. It's going to be fast, it's going to be draggy, and there will probably be times where there'll be a train of cars that will want to get past that are going to be stuck behind each other, Charlie, because they're not finding because they're unable to find the line to pass and have to keep close to the overtaking vehicle. So last lap should be very exciting. It will be fast. It'll be interesting. But the one thing is, Charlie, is that this race is obviously very crucial to having consistency. And it's the only oval circuit, by the way, before the 500, the Indy 500, which will be in May, and then after the Texas race, they're going to go to Long Beach in California for that one. But yes, very important oval race. It will be on after the F1 race. Actually, it will be on probably clashing at the end of the F1 race. Unfortunately, there seems to be a bit of a clash. Unfortunately, with the F1 racing parts. They might start at the end of it, just after the end of it, but there will be some sort of clash with it. So if the F1 finishes before and you're able to pop over to watch on Sky Sports Mix, the race will be on instead of F1 because of the clash, then feel free to pop over and watch that. But yeah, double single seater that day, Charlie, at F1 and then IndyCar. Oh, what a way to kick off the end of March. It's certainly a big weekend of sport coming up next weekend.
Yeah, and obviously because of these because of them two sports being on Sunday, this show will not air next Saturday instead because of the Formula One action. We will round that up next week on the show as always. And of course, Scott McLaughlin won the first round at St. Petersburg. Can he win again? He did come very close last year in one of the races at Texas. Just got to wait and see. Moving on now from the sports news to Charlie's good news and week 10 of The Apprentice UK. Here we go for the baby food task, which I have to say, humiliation for both teams. They didn't win a task this time round. And I have to say, if your name is Aaron or Akeem, you will be the ones that will be pretty much fed up with your performance because this week, the last week on the show, there was a double firing. Both of them got the boot by Lord Sugar. Akeem got fired for the branding, which we're going to come to in a minute, but Aaron got fired for creating a Moroccan sort of baby food dish that never really worked in the end. Zach, what did you make of the last task on The Apprentice?
Oh, Charlie, that was very bad, I have to say, Charlie. Two got fired. And at this point in the season, Charlie, both teams losing the task is stunning, really, in week 10, Charlie, because there's now 7-5. There's now 5 people left. And we're going to go through the wild process of the interview soon, not in very soon, Charlie. And we're already struggling. There's already people struggling, Charlie. As well, there's already people. We're already finding an issue where both teams are losing, and as well at week 10, Charlie. It's shocking. This tells you, Charlie, the fact that both teams lost in week 10 is appalling, quite frankly. As well, Charlie. It really is. It's very poor, Charlie. As well. No, but next week is definitely going to be the week, Charlie. As well, because next week it is I think it is
the interviews. Yeah,
it's going to be the interviews, the dreaded interviews where every contestant will get grilled on every single bit of aspiration they have, their past, their history, their future business, and why they want to partner with Lord Sugar, and what their plans are for their business as well. But certainly, Charlie, this week was certainly shocking. We had Aaron and Akeem. I think it was Aaron and Akeem, wasn't it? Got fired as well, Charlie. And the most shocking development, I have to say, of this baby food task, Charlie, was one of the names of the food, the baby food, as well. Now, it was supposed to say, if I'm correct in saying, Charlie, and I was going through this as well, because I remember you sending me the links to this as well.
Yeah.
It was meant to be called, was it?
First time foodies.
This one called. It was Akeem that did the presentation, and obviously as well. But it ended up saying, because they did a horrific error to their logo, instead of saying first time food and everything like foodies and everything, it ended up saying first time F dies, which if you actually translate it, it stands for first time dies. That I have to say is the most darkest bit of baby food I've ever heard in my life. Promoting the deaths of babies is sort of the sort of thing we see in Texas and Florida when they ban all sort of these abortions and everything like that.
Oh my God.
It reminds me of that. Imagine we're giving you a baby food that it says on the cover here. I know this is a Leicester City mug, by the way. I'm just giving an example. Imagine if it said here, first time dies, and you give it to your babies. Are you literally murdering your babies?
That's horrible.
It's a wicked and quite frankly awful.
Oh, God.
Frankly, it's unbelievable, Chai. Awful naming of a food that's supposed to be baby friendly.
Oh.
And they're promoting the hell of death instead by accident. I can't believe it. I literally can't believe it, Charlie. That was incredible. Imagine creating a food that said first time dies or something like that. Now I don't know if you can actually see it because my thing's too bright at the moment. But there's a give you example. I know it's twisted because I have to say, but there's the first. It says first time dies and everything like that, and then you got the bowl of mugs basically here as well. Just give you an example of what it is. It's incredible.
Oh no! Wow.
Such an error on that and run out of time and do that sort of thing as well. It's unbelievable. There was also problems for Steph as well in the task, Charlie. She obviously because they were promoted on the shopping channel. Obviously that was last week. Actually, I just remember now. She was responsible for the first time guys product. So I'm really surprised that she got away with that.
I was as well.
Charlie. But she managed to get her through, and that's incredible. But it was Aki, Keem, and Aaron that faced the boot because they were so useless, Charlie, as well. So we got the final interviews next week as well, and that will be an absolute grilling. And quite frankly, I've read comments saying that this is the worst set of contestants ever, Charlie. I quite frankly, they might not be wrong on this if we're seeing losing teams in week 10 and the final 4 are basically a bunch of useless fools. Oh dear me.
I have to review that task Zach as cringe because the other team went for Little Taste Adventures. The name was actually good. And they actually done a decent branding, but the product, the taste of it was horrible. Aaron tried to go innovative, and Aaron actually was very honest in the boardroom. He took full responsibility of what happened and got fired because he made a mistake with it. Akeem tried to keep himself in, but I thought he would have gone much earlier, creating that horrible cruise ship logo on the first week, which more looked like a massive turd. If I'm honest with you. to now creating a logo in the other task, which again looks like somebody had pooed on himself. Yeah, absolutely. Horrible logo. I'm surprised Stephanie survived. They could have had at least 2 or 3 that could have gone that week. But yeah, that's what I review it as. Because the thing is, I feel so sorry for Harpreet because she was the project manager. She actually done really well. And Karen Brady did say that one of them actually liked the product and would have placed 10,000 orders, like for 10,000 units. But because of the logo, they didn't want to. And it's why that, as a result of that, the Harpreet wasn't really responsible for it. They could have won the task, but Harpreet didn't really do anything wrong. And then Akeem, just basically responsible for that, got fired. But yeah, guys, all I can say is next week, about Thursday, about 8 or 9 o'clock, the interviews will take place. CVs, business plans for Lord Sugar will be taken into consideration on that issue. Now it's time to move on to the papers. Time to have a look at what's happening on our newspaper headlines. So plenty on here. If we have any of tomorrow's papers that come in, I'll let you know on that. But let's have a look at the papers for today. The Times goes for Kiev ready to face the onslaught. The I Weekend goes, Putin closes in on Kiev. It claims the capital of Ukraine is in threat from a Russian invasion. Now, the Mirror's headline is Hope amid horror. Bombed ward mum has a baby girl. Also in The Guardian, Emmanuel Macron savages UK for not making refugees welcome. The Financial Weekend goes for West cuts trade ties to punish Putin. And also British households face £38 billion hit from energy bills as the cost of living crisis bites. The Daily Telegraph goes for Jeremy Hunt calls for a massive boost in defence spending. The Daily Express goes for Putin's plot to blackmail the world. The Daily Star goes not now North Korea and India and claims of launching nuclear weapons. The Daily Mail goes for Queen in a new health blow, so she'll miss the Commonwealth Service. And The Sun also goes with Harry feels snub and outrage and insults the Queen. Zach, what do you make to the latest newspaper headlines?
Well, it's interesting. The Mail and the Sun are going for the royal headlines. Interested about. By the way, there's at least one paper that's already revealed their headline for tomorrow. I think that's the Preserve, but we'll get back to the end of that at the end, Charlie. Let's start with the Times on Saturday, though. And one of these, the two papers that are focusing on Kyiv, Charlie, because the UK intelligence revealed over the weekend that Kyiv is getting the Russian army is getting closer to Kyiv. It's a slow but steady progress to Kyiv. That convoy may have got broken up over the last few days, Charlie, but there's now a slow and steady ride to Kyiv. And although US intelligence saying that it could last for a few more weeks if possible, they are getting closer and closer to Kyiv whilst they build up their forces and try and take over that city as well. However, I expect as well, Charlie, that there's going to be a lot of optimism from the Ukrainian side that that they can hold on with their defense and everything like that. The I Weekend focused on that as well, by the way, putting closes on Kyiv as the Russian forces are going to go back to targeting this area as well, in that area as well. Let's go with the Mirror, actually, because this is a very lovely headline. Hope amid horror. This is talking about the headline of this mum who's in a hospital ward whilst it's been bombed, and she has had a baby girl. Welcoming to the world, Charlie. At the moment, this is on Wednesday. Her hospital was bombed, and she was taken out. The next day, she was given birth to a wonderful baby girl. I have to say, Charlie, that's an incredible looking. Oh, it's just cute, and I think the Guardian goes with that a little bit as well in the corner as well. But they've also, I see the Guardian, interestingly, Charlie, have gone for Macron savages UK for not making refugees welcome. So the Guardian going for the liberal angle on this, Charlie, because there's been controversy over the UK refugee scheme where they seem to be very slow setting up these visa systems and visa centres as well. I have to say, Charlie, it's quite shocking, really, to be fair. And it's kept direct criticism from the French, who have been quite friendly to these migrants and obviously want to be welcome European country, that the UK have not done their job, understandably so, Charlie. I couldn't be right to his theories as well, quite frankly, no matter what the Home Office says as well, despite the progress as well on that one. The FT, interestingly, Charlie, this is one I want to talk on because the West cuts trade ties to punish Putin. In Congress this week, Charlie, I want to point out in America as well, Charlie, that they've passed a government spending bill to fund the government, which also includes £14 billion of aid for Ukraine. And I think in next week, Charlie, they're going to bring another bill forward, which basically calls for the revocation of Russia's role in the WTO, and introducing tariffs on Russian exports as well. Charlie, there's also been more measures agreed by the G7, more sanctions there as well. And it also talks about Biden's warns on chemical weapons, as he pointed out, Charlie, that Russia has used chemical weapons before in false flag attempts And quite frankly, it's not going to be the first. This is probably a very likely theme that Russia will use a chemical weapon somewhere to kill civilians, kill people, to destroy buildings. Unfortunately, as well. Daily Telegraph, Jeremy Hunt calls for massive boost in defence spending. And the reason why I think he's calling for this, Charlie, in my opinion, is because if you think about it, the army's been cut in this latest round of defence, Charlie. At the budget spending review last year, Charlie, they trimmed the resources of the army of the actual army. So whilst there was a boost in defence to move to other resources, then the army actually got cut. So now there's a review by Jeremy Hunt to actually put a bigger boost in defence, building up defence systems of the G7, the NATO, and the UK as well, China. And I think from what I read, we're due to see the spring statement, I think, very soon, Charlie. I think at the end of March, that Rishi Sunak is going to unveil, which is going to announce this boost in defence spending. So that's probably is going to be featuring in the spring statement, and there's probably going to be a budget increase in the Defense Department as well, which I hope is the case, Charlie, because the war in Ukraine has shown why it needs a bigger defense budget. And I have to say, as a socialist myself, I totally agree with the suggestion of a bigger defense budget. As much as I hate wars and everything like that, I don't think, in some ways, Charlie, this is, change our view on situation and what happens internationally as well. Daily Express, Charlie, this is Putin's plot to blackmail the world. Doesn't it just feel like Charlie? They have Ukraine have claimed that Russia's planning for a false flag to have this man-made catastrophe at Chernobyl airport, Charlie. I mean, that is a nuclear plant which the Russians have took control of. But if that blows up, Charlie, then there's going to be a nuclear disaster, not for you, just over for Ukraine, but worldwide as well, Charlie, because the consequences of that is going to be horrible, significant, and very, very ugly. Which is unthinkable, Charlie, that the Russians could control that sort of thing. And I'm afraid because they are in control, some of the airports, the power plants are in Russia's hands, unfortunately, Charlie. They're not going to be very trusted to use those sort of things, I'm afraid, Charlie.
I know it's ridiculous, frankly, what Putin wants to do to blackmail the world.
To the Star, this is an interesting talk. They go from not now North Korea and India. They've gone for that North Korea has obviously tested new rockets and ballistic missiles that basically can hit the USA if they really wanted to, Charlie. I mean, what's the USA done wrong at this point, Charlie? At the moment, I don't understand really. I know their relationship with North Korea is basically zero, but the idea that you're going to get North Korea trying to build ballistic missiles so the US reacts and build their own is quite worrying, to be fair, Charlie. And the India one, what this is referencing, Charlie, is that India fired some sort of missile, what they call by accident, at Pakistan because there was some sort of error, technical error or something like, Charlie, that caused the missile to be launched into Pakistan. I mean, I don't know how you could launch rockets off by error, Charlie. It's very strange definition, I have to say, as well. So they've gone for the comical view of the North Korea and India. The Mail and the let's start with the Mail first, and then the Sun. The Mail have gone for the royal angle because the Queen is going to miss the Commonwealth Day service, which I believe, Charlie, is on the Monday, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
That is Monday's Commonwealth Day. Day. Then we do a service to celebrate it as well. She is missing it, unfortunately, Charlie, because of health problems.
And COVID recovery as well.
COVID recovery as well, Charlie. Probably all the rest of the doctors and everything like that. Very much sad to see that happening. And then the Sun goes for another their wild obsession of Harry. And although in this instance that he's going to be missing Prince Philip's sort of memorial service, Charlie, because of what he calls security concerns. There was he complained about the security a few months ago. In his eyes, it's not been addressed, and therefore he's not going. Make up your mind of whether that you think that's correct or not. I'm sure the Sun targeted audience will probably think he's an idiot and a liar and can't be trusted. So that's what the Sun thinks about it. And I think the Observer, Charlie, have also published their paper for tomorrow as well. And it goes for, I'll get it up now. It goes for Gove bid to end refugee chaos with £350 cash for rooms offer, Charlie. So it looks like they are going to give it a financial offer to those who basically want to come to the UK to basically live somewhere in a room, accommodate a refugee as well. If anyone wants to open, basically this is basically saying that anyone who wants to open a home to a refugee could be offered £350 a month to get accommodated and to sort of get into their new lives, Charlie, as well. This shows I think it shows the measures, Charlie, in some ways that the government having to take because of the mess of the Home Office, really, in their first place, Charlie, of getting the systems up in place, trying to get the visa system going. They've been so slow at this, they're now having to offer financial incentives to actually get this all working, Charlie. And I'm afraid it's embarrassing for the government. It really is embarrassing on this one as well. As much as the good job they did on the intelligence side of things, Charlie, they've been terrible on the refugee side of things. And this is why the strict immigration policies have a weakness, I think, in some ways, Charlie, because of something like this. And it's going right here.
Just before we finish as well, there's another sub-headline there. Safe haven of Lviv braces for the worst as Russians close in as well. That's to do with the invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah. Lviv has sort of been quiet throughout this, Charlie. The Russians haven't really targeted, but now they're going to that far off into distance to target that end of it. They're certainly expanding their option to trying to target, other areas that they haven't struggled to capture at the moment, trying to go for other areas.
Yeah, so that's the newspapers today. We'll do more paper reviews next week. Now it's time for the Great British Star and Red Devil of the Week. Now, we've got 2 nominations for the Great British Star that I'm going to put forward this week. Now, this one, I know this one didn't end in a very positive end, but I just want to say to this woman, there was this woman, one of the Great British Stars I'm going to give is to this woman who actually got out during the week and confronted a Russian soldier. I'm not going to do this as a Great British Star. I just want to say there was a woman this week, 31-year-old woman who got shot in Russia, in Ukraine, after a Russian tank shot her for going out to get her sick mum some medicine. I just want to say that she deserves a recognition for the British Star, I think, for that, because they have shown real resilience to help the people of Ukraine. Well, let's go for the British Stars this week. I'm going to give my Great British Star, my first nomination is going to go to someone I think who has really stepped in. Kevin Magnussen gets my nomination for returning to Haas this week. I have to say, if it wasn't for Gunther Steiner, Kevin Magnussen wouldn't be racing. For me, he is certainly looked really strong in the Haas in one of the tests. At one point went fastest. So, yeah, he seemed really confident in the car, and I give him a nomination for coming back after a season off to jumping in the car last minute. My second nomination, and this one is going to be an interesting nomination because I'm going to give it to someone in particular who has made amends at sharing positive news to the world, quite frankly, in this as well. So this is a positive news story here as well. Now, the man... So this is to do... actually, we're just going to quickly go. My other nomination as well for the Great British Star is actually going to be someone who's done really good. So I'm just going to get up now quickly what my Great British Star nomination is for you now. I do apologise, it is taking a little while. Now, this is what I'm going to give it to. A man who receives a grandfather's Purple Heart awarded 75 years ago after his stranger searches to find her second cousin. That there, I think, would be recognition for the Great British Star as well. Because I have to say, if it wasn't for this person, it would be there. So here is the person here. It was Jeff Herzog who's going to get my nomination. He was recently contacted by a stranger who searched tirelessly so she could return her grandfather's Purple Heart War Medal. She's not just any stranger, however, she turned to be her second cousin. The act of kindness brought together members of their families who'd never met. The Purple Heart was awarded to Webster E. Herzog, who died in Belgium in 1944. The above last picture was the last picture taken of him. Wow, that is a huge, huge mention there. Red Devil of the Week. Couple of Red Devils for me. I'm going to give one of them to Vladimir Putin for bombing a hospital in Mariupol. I have to say that certainly is Marxist propaganda and a war crime on Russia. But also, I'm going to give my second Red Devil of the Week. And this one for me was kind of a controversial one on the subject of this, because this next Red Devil is actually going to go to someone who I think has been a big problem this week, and that is going to be Nikita Mazepin, who will earn my nomination for the Red Devil this week. The reason I'm going to give it to Mazepin is because he absolutely lambasted Haas for his resignation and claimed he wanted to set up an organisation himself around supporting, like, obviously, the Twitter program to support something. I'm not sure what it was to do with. But it's clear to me that Nikita Mazepin should be well aware of himself, that he has been sanctioned by Russia because his dad is a oligarch to Vladimir Putin. Zach, what do you make of my nominations?
I agree about that. It's sanctioned by the EU, by the way. Not Russia, but
the EU, yeah.
Yeah, EU. I actually agree with your choices, interestingly enough. Which comes to me, actually. I'm going to pick my stars of the week, Charlie. And the first one I'm going to give it to, and it's been the most obvious one I've decided that I'm going to give it to my first one here, Charlie, is the Ukrainian 5-year-old girl, right, okay, in a shelter in Kyiv. Her name is Amelia, right? She recorded the video of her singing "Let It Go" in a bomb shelter, Charlie. Now, I don't like the song. I know it's controversial. I say I can't stand the song normally because it's not my type of thing I watch, and I don't like the song at all. I think it's very overrated and off-putting. However, in times like this, Charlie, I actually think this is cute. And I'm not, obviously, I won't play the video, but I listened to it, right, okay. And it brought the hearts of many people together because it was, she sang it in Ukrainian. And she actually got attention, I believe, from the singer Indira Menzel,
Indira Menzel, yeah.
Indira Menzel. And she put on social media, "We see you, we really see you." And she also shared a blue and yellow heart emoji, the color of the Ukrainian flag. So the fact that she sang that and got attention from the singer, wow, what a star! What a cute little singer. She's one of the 2 British stars this week as well. I'm also going to give the second star of the week to the Ukraine ambassador to the UN for his amazing quote at one of the UN Security Council meetings this week, where he suggested that Russian diplomats in London should call 111, the NHS health number line, to ask about mental health concerns or basically being brainwashed as well. We're fantastic comeback from the Ukrainian ambassador, the 5-year-old girl, and the Ukrainian ambassador, who decides to savage the Russian diplomats with a little bit of a health advice, are the stars of the week. And the Red Devils this week, Charlie. Oh, actually, I'm going to give it a third actually as well, Charlie, because I want to give it recognition here. I'm going to turn to the world of football as well, Charlie. Cristiano Ronaldo, the British star as well. He's become the all-time goal scorer in the FIFA rankings in all of history, and thanks to his 3-2 win today in Manchester United v Spurs, he managed to score the goal that made him the all-time goal scorer in the FIFA rankings, and he scored a hat-trick to do it as well. So Cristiano Ronaldo is also the third British Star of the Week. And moving on to the Red Devils, Charlie. Well, there's two of them I'm thinking this week. One of them is going to be Roman Abramovich because he's been sanctioned and has therefore, because he owns Chelsea FC, Charlie, Chelsea FC has had their assets frozen. They can't sell tickets. They can't generate Roman Abramovich can't generate revenue itself. The club is facing a sale. Their bank account has been frozen. They're losing sponsors, all because Roman Abramovich is a nice little close tie to the Russian government. So that's number one. Number two, I was also going to give it to Nikita Mazepin as well, Charlie, because we found out new details about his sanctioning from the EU as well, that his dad was basically propping up the Russian government and basically supported a company, Charlie, that was directly responsible for the degradement of the Ukraine as a company, the country, Charlie. So yeah, the fact that the Sun was linked to this as well, and unfortunately it makes him the Red Devil as well, Charlie. The fact that Nikita Mazepin lost a seat and has also been sanctioned by the EU as well. What's a double whammy for Nikita Mazepin? So Roman Abramovich, Nikita Mazepin and the Red Devils, the 5-year-old goal, the UN ambassador to Ukraine, and Cristiano Ronaldo are the British Stars of the Week, Charlie.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah, and that's all we got time for the Charlie Tolhurst Show today. We'll be back again next week on Sunday for the Charlie Tolhurst Show, recapping many more great news headlines. Take care, everyone, and goodbye.